Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. If you are here and this is the third time that you're here, welcome again. It's great to have you back. Hopefully you're not sick of us just yet because we have a great debate to go today. We are talking all about which is Australia's greatest Archosaur. And if you're like, what the heck is an Archosaur? Don't worry, we will go through that as well. To begin, I do just want to say a bit of a welcome to country. I am joining you from the New South Wales South Coast from Jurinja country, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of these amazing lands, waters, and skies where we get to live and work. We are very lucky that we get to work out on country and excavate some of these rocks that not only predate humans, but lots of other life in Australia that we have today as well. Many of the sites that we work on are preserved because Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have such an amazing connection to and care of country. So we're very lucky that some of these things still exist today. This session is being recorded, so if you miss it or you have to leave early or you've got a dinosaur mad person who couldn't quite make it, that will be available on the Founder Fossil YouTube page afterwards. The other two talks that we have already done are currently uploaded, so if you did miss those, you can go back and go back and watch them as well. But before we dive in, we'll give you a bit of an intro on who we actually are and what qualifications we have to be arguing all about these incredible animals. Little bit of a spoiler alert, but Adele and Jake are much more qualified to be having this debate than I. They are the experts in their field of both of the dinosaurs or archosaurs that they will likely be picking, whereas I am just here for a good time. I am your host. I'm Sally Hurst, and I am a paleontologist and the creator of the Found a Fossil project. So, this project is a website, a platform that gives you advice on what to do if you ever find a fossil, as well as an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander artifact. So, I do have a educational background in both paleontology and archaeology. I'm a researcher with Macquarie University in Sydney, and much of my work focuses not only on what modern people would do if they found a fossil, but what ancient people would do as well. Did the ancient Egyptians ever find fossils? And if they did, what the heck did they think that they were? I'm an educator at the Australian Museum, and I love the storytelling aspect of paleontology and getting to talk about these amazing creatures we have. And so I also run my own business, going into schools and talking about these creatures, and running workshops for different events as well. I'm also something called a superstar of STEM, and this is a program run by Science and Technology Australia that aims to smash gender assumptions about what a scientist can look like. Adele and I are both part of this program, and it means that we get to be quite visible role models for the next generation getting into STEM, and creating an amazing network of female and non-binary scientists all around Australia. As I mentioned, a lot of my research focuses more on that higher level finding fossils. I don't actually have a specific species, a specific time period that I focus on or that I am an expert in. So I have just picked my favorite Australian dinosaur, whereas the other two have a little bit more expertise about their specific animals. So Adele is going to tell you all about hers.
Awesome. Thanks, Sally. I am speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also acknowledge anyone who identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait as First Nations with us today. I am a frazzled final year PhD candidate at Curtin University. I've been studying part-time, so I've literally been doing this for going on 8 years, which is wild to think about. It's been amazing fun. And I am also a research associate at the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum of Natural History, which is in Koa Country in Winton, and Karasosaurus Corner, which is also in Queensland, 2.5 hours up the road from Age of Dinosaurs. All that to say, I lived in Queensland for a number of years. If you didn't catch what was it? Interview with a paleontologist session. I've done 30 weeks of field work over the years, and I'm also the host of the podcast Pals and Paleo, as you might have guessed. Love a bit of a yarn. And through that, I've been able to chat with fine folks like Jake and Sally as well. Jake, we chatted about megaraptors. So again, if by some miracle he loses tonight's debate, you can hear about why megaraptors are sick animals by listening to that one. And then with Found a Fossil and Sally's background, you can also listen to that episode with her. And yeah, as Sally mentioned, I am one of the superstars of STEM. So if anyone's listening to this and you would love a paleontologist to come out to your school, get me. It's part of the program. It's for free. I would love to do that. And who knows, I'll try and bring some fossils, maybe some replica fossils along with me. But I think that's enough from me. And I will pass over to Jake.
All right. I have a far smaller itinerary of things I've done compared to the previous two before me. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Jake. I'm also on Wurundjeri land, way on the other side from Adele. I'm a PhD candidate at Monash Uni and Museums Victoria Research Institute, pretty much the research side of Melbourne Museum. I specialize and work on theropod dinosaurs, meat-eating dinosaurs, the ones that everyone loves. I have the easiest argument today because they're the default favorite dinosaur. Um, yeah, I don't really have much else to add to that, really. Yeah, I get paid to talk about dinosaurs and look at dinosaurs and research dinosaurs, and I have a great time doing it. Most of my money goes into dinosaur toys or dinosaur tattoos, and again, I get the easiest fight here. So I think I need to give Adele and Sally a little bit more reasoning to fight for their Archosaurs.
Yeah, we'll see. I've got some interesting questions, and I don't think you're going to win on every question at least. Okay, so if you are indeed wondering what the heck is an Archosaur, this is a bit of a phylogeny or family tree of the whole reptile family group known as Sauria. You can see on the left-hand side, you've got things like your snakes and lizards, which are in the squamata. And those marine reptiles known as mosasaurs are actually in that group. So they don't actually count as dinosaurs. This also goes for things like our ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. They are not actually dinosaurs. They're not that closely related. And when we zoom in, we can start to see what actually does count as archosaurs. So turtles and kin are kind of the out group here, but the main ones we look at are things like our crocodiles, things like our pterosaurs, and our dinosaurs, which does happen to include birds. So every bird alive today is a direct descendant of our dinosaurs. So it does mean if you've eaten chicken nuggets, you have indeed eaten a dinosaur. But I thought I'd do a bit of a crash course in some of the animals that you may have heard of that were around in Australia in the past that are big and could probably win in a fight, but we won't actually be considering today. After that, we're going to give you a little bit of a crash course in Australian dinosaurs because chances are you probably haven't heard of many of them. The dinosaurs like T-Rex and Triceratops are very cool, but they are from places such as North America. Velociraptors from Mongolia, some of the other big ones like the Carcharodonts are often from South America. And so Australia, just like today, had pretty weird fauna. So we're going to go through some of our top contenders. First, though, things that dinosaurs and archosaurs are not include enormous species like the megalodon or the meg. This was an enormous shark that was bigger than a bus. Some of the largest estimates put it at over 24 meters long. It lived from around 3 million years ago to 23 million years ago, so it did not overlap with dinosaurs, nor did it overlap with humans, thankfully. But we find their teeth washed up on some beaches around Australia. Sometimes you'll find them in the middle of nowhere in Western Australia as well. out in the desert. But as it's a big shark, it is a fish, and so it is indeed not an archosaur. So won't be under consideration today. Another one, this one is more so from Victoria, and I believe is Victoria's fossil emblem, correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, is Coolosuchus cleelandi. Now, this one's very cool because Jake, Adele, and I have previously gone on a dig called Dinosaur Dreaming down in Victoria, and the Coolosuchus is named after Leslie Cool, who helps to run the dig, and Mike Cleland, who is also involved, and just very cool to have a fossil named after you. But this thing was an enormous amphibian, so big temnospondyl, 3 to 4 meters long, living in the Cretaceous, and so possibly could have been munching on some of these dinosaurs. So to give you a bit of scale on how massive this weird thing was, that is it next to a human. So again, very glad that they're not around today. Just seeing the jawbone alone and how massive that is and some of the pointy teeth on it, it's not something that you'd accidentally want to stumble upon in a little swamp. And the last one I'll talk about, as I mentioned, things like our mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and pliosaurs are not archosaurs either. And up in Queensland, we did have some big ones. So this is Kronosaurus. Del mentioned that she worked at Kronosaurus Corner. So out in the middle of nowhere, you find these big skeletons with all these pointy teeth. And again, they lived alongside dinosaurs, but they're actually not archosaurs. So these guys will not be under consideration, but some of the very cool things that will be include things like our ornithopods, and Jake is going to talk about these ones.
Cool. So our record in Australia, particularly for archosaurs, is pretty limited. Most of it is from what we call the middle of the Cretaceous. We've got this kind of along the eastern side between Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, a time range of about 30 million years, something between 124 to about 95 million years ago. There is some stuff from the Jurassic. I don't think there's any pterosaurs from the Jurassic in Australia, Del. No. So some dinosaurs from the Jurassic, but not a lot. Most of it is from the Cretaceous. And in the Cretaceous, most of the stuff we have found are ornithopods. Now, ornithopods are kind of the group of dinosaurs that are, in most movies, these are the cannon fodder. These are the things that get thrown around and eaten and ripped apart. But ultimately, if you were staring down a bull or a bull elephant, you wouldn't be too confident. A lot of things we find in Victoria, in particular, these small bipedal ornithopods, things like Lianosaur and Atlascoptosaurus, something only about 2 meters in length, probably quite quick, and just diverse all across Cretaceous Victoria in these old river systems. If we go other places further north, places like New South Wales and Queensland, we find bigger forms, things like Muttaburrasaurus. And these are the ones that are starting to get to the same size as the hadrosaurs, your more famous dinosaurs from the Northern Hemisphere, things like Parasaurolophus. Different group of ornithopod, but around the same size and probably occupying a similar role in the environment. So these are the most commonly found dinosaurs in Australia. Probably then overall the best record, not for individual animals, but of the group overall. We have several species, is the most diverse group of dinosaurs we know in Australia. They're ultimately one of the most successful groups of dinosaurs that ever existed. They have so many forms, occupied so many niches, became so successful, made it all the way to the end of the Cretaceous in places where we see those deposits. So these are one of our contenders. Not my favorite, but they're very important to ecosystems in general. But this is what I'm here for. Theropods. So theropods is the group characterized by 3 balancing toes on each foot, bipedalism, and includes every known carnivorous dinosaur. Not every single theropod was carnivorous, not every single theropod was carnivorous, but every carnivorous dinosaur was a theropod. This is one of the most successful groups of animals of all time because they're still around today. Theropods gave rise to the birds. They grew feathers, probably to help them run or climb trees or glide, and then learned how to fly. But I'm concerned with the non-avian theropods, your non-bird dinosaurs. We have a bit of evidence of these guys all across Cretaceous as well as Jurassic. So we have one representative from the Jurassic. This is Ozraptor. It's a small bottom of a shin bone. And that's it. We don't know that much about it. And then most every other theropod in Australia is one bone. We have a few other species, things like Tamimus, Kakaru, Rapator. These are all species named from a single bone from the Cretaceous. And then you have Australovenator. So Megaraptor, it's this group for these big forearms with these massive claws. We only find these animals in South America and Australia. And in Australia, they seem to be the apex predator. We don't yet have evidence of a giant theropod, something like T-Rex or Carcharodontosaurus or Spinosaurus. Australovenator and its friends were the top of the food chain. These are still decently sized animals. Australovenator itself is probably about 6 meters in length and almost my height at the hip. And I'm about 1.7 meters tall. Still a very patchy record. These are animals with very hollow bones, like modern birds. So they don't preserve very well, particularly in our environments. So yeah, most of the record, I'd say about 99.9% of the theropod record from Australia is a single bone, and more often than not, that bone isn't even complete. And then Australovenator is our one representative known from a partial skeleton. There's bits of the bottom jaw, a full arm, a full leg, parts of each, and then some ribs and some gastralia, some other bit, and lots of teeth. Still not the best representative of an Australian dinosaur, but the best meat eater we have. And you know, they're meat-eating dinosaurs, they're the coolest things. There's nothing like these on the planet today. Even something like Australovenator, there isn't a bipedal 7 meter long animal that's going to run you down. I have a lot to fight for and a lot to say for these guys, but I will stop there and we'll talk a bit more about Australovenator later. I'll pass on to Del.
All right, so 7 meters, yeah, that sounds kind of big, but sauropods are the largest dinosaurs that we find here in Australia. The groups that are found here, excluding Rhedosaurus, which is actually from the Jurassic, they're all titanosaurs. And as the name suggests, these are huge animals. Tyrannosaurs is also the group of sauropods that made it to the late Cretaceous and were wiped out during that mass extinction event. So just kind of have that in the back of your mind. But a baby or juvenile Diamantinosaurus was described by my friend and colleague Samantha Beeston, who's a University of College London PhD candidate, named Ollie. The specimen was nicknamed Ollie, and it was 8 meters long. So again, already bigger than Australovenator, and the adults were huge. A teenager is between 10 to 12 meters long, whereas some of the biggest examples of sauropods we have in Australia were 20 meters long from nose to tail. And these, it's difficult to estimate the weight of them, but they probably weigh between 20 to 30 tons. They were absolutely massive, but these were gentle giants. These were herbivores. So their teeth weren't really good for grinding the way the teeth ornithopods have. That's, yeah. Their teeth are kind of like simple peg-shaped, and they would just like grab onto stuff and just swallow. And then these are like giant fermenting chambers on legs. Their massive guts broke down vegetation. We have some research that will hopefully be out soon, but based on some scanning electron microscope analysis of the teeth, looking at like the marks on the teeth and working out whether there's like a lot of grit or if they're eating higher up. As you might have guessed, with their massive, long, beam-like necks, they're eating sort of higher up. They're eating conifers, so pine trees. Around at the same time were cycads. There would have been ginkgos as well. No evidence, I don't think, at the moment for our Australian sauropods eating ginkgos. But there's been a few different species found to date. They're all from the Winton Formation, except for Rhedosaurus browni, because it's from much earlier deposits. Rhedosaurus was found near Roma in the 1920s, I believe. The person who discovered it, or worked on it, I should say, yeah, the person who worked on it went on to be the director of the Queensland Museum. But yeah, Diamantinosaurus, Wintonatitan, Savannahsaurus, they are found over in Winton. And you can find the holotype specimens of Diamantinosaurus and Savannahsaurus on permanent public display at the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum of Natural History. Wintonatidan is over in Queensland Museum. I believe it's not on permanent public display. And then Australotitan was named based on a massive 20-meter long individual by the Eromanga Natural History Museum. That specimen, Cooper, I was part of a research paper that suggested Australotitan might not be a valid species, but it's still a massive animal. So that's what we know about sauropods. Really thinking about this, I probably should have picked a sauropod, but instead I decided to be totally biased and also talk about pterosaurs. So again, pterosaurs aren't dinosaurs. They are absolutely incredible, though. They have a fossil record. Whoops, did I do that?
That was me.
Anyway, it's fixed. No, you're all good. Pterosaurs have a fossil record that spans 154 million years. They evolved flight about 60 million years before the first birds took to the skies, and over 200 different species have been found. They are known from every continent, including Antarctica, and at the moment, we have 5 species known from Australia, and again, they've all been named from Queensland. So even though I technically live closer to Naarm in Melbourne now, obviously, like, Queensland holds a very special place in my heart, and I've named 2 species of pterosaur, Ferrodraco lentini and Haliskia petersoni. They are the most complete pterosaurs found in Australia. So Ferrodraco's a 10% complete skeleton, whereas Haliskia is something that was named last year based on a 22% complete skeleton. Now, pterosaurs, they have their pros and their cons. Obviously, they can fly, and that's a superpower, right? But they also have very thin, hollow bones. They're actually really cool. Some of the bones in some species of pterosaur, they have this like double helix structure on the inside with all the struts to try and like make the bone strong and withstand like flex and movement. So yeah, I just think that pterosaurs are so incredible in terms of the way they're built and the way their skeleton has evolved to cope with, you know, the stress and strain of flight. And also pterosaurs can eat a whole bunch of different foods, but the ones that we find here in Australia, they eat fish. They lived around a massive inland sea, which is where Kronosaurus queenslandicus, which Sally mentioned earlier, lived as well. But yes, that's enough from me. That's enough about pterosaurs. We'll see what else we have in the Archosaur debate.
So the last little group of dinosaurs that we have evidence for that is based off more than one questionable bone, I will say, there's a few others that we won't mention, are the Ankylosaurs. So you'll probably be familiar with Ankylosaurs because they're better known from places like North America as the tail-clubbed dinosaurs. So often they were these big armored tanks that would be pretty difficult to take on. Some of them were like 6 to 9 meters long, and they were just quite insane animals, really. In Australia, we have this gorgeous specimen known as Kunbarrasaurus. There is another species known as Minmi as well. But this one was incredibly cool as it had preserved osteoderms, or this kind of scaly skin and armor that crocodiles have, that was preserved with it. It's known as a float and bloat specimen, which basically means that it died at some point, probably near a waterway. And then as it died, its body fills with all of these gross gases, and so it actually floats across the water. So it might have actually died on a riverbank or something. The river floods, it floats down somewhere else. But this is actually key to its fossilization because when those gases start to leak out and escape, it sinks to the bottom of that waterway and then gets covered in sediment, which is how we get such a nice fossil. We're missing a little bit of the tail of this one, so we don't actually think it had a club tail. We think it probably had a slightly more flattened tail with some spikes on it. but no club at the end. There is a whole series of these ankylosaurs from around the world which also don't have these club tails, but are still covered in this spiky armor. Now you can see from the fossil there, so on the right-hand side of this picture, this is a cast of the fossil in the Queensland Museum. It's quite small. He's a small boy. So in real life, he probably only came up to between your knee and hip height on an adult. So he was a small little herbivore. Would have been quite cute. And we also have stomach contents preserved for this guy as well. So he is a very, very cool specimen. And leading into that, he is also my chosen dinosaur for our dino or archosaur debate. So as I mentioned, he was a early Cretaceous dinosaur. So he was around from around 99 to 105 million years ago. From those stomach contents, we know that he liked eating ferns and leaves, maybe little twigs and things as well. Again, he's quite close to the ground. And something else, if you didn't know, grass hadn't actually evolved at this point. So all of our herbivorous dinosaurs would have been eating things like trees and ferns and leaves, not actually grass. That evolved, I think, about 30 million years ago, around then. But yeah, he would have been a very cute little guy, just trundling around. Didn't have the longest legs, so probably not that quick. But hopefully with a big old spiky tail like that, he would have warded off some of the predators who may have been sharing his environment. And speaking of predators, surprise to absolutely no one, Jake's chosen animal is...
Let's talk about Australovenator. Australovenator winensis is a megaraptorid. It is the best complete theropod from Australia. It has these wicked, massive arms with these huge claws on the front, a specialization of its group. They are defined by these claws pretty much. Again, these are animals only known in South America and Australia. Our megaraptorid Australovenator is from about 95 million years ago. It's also at the Winton Formation. Here on the right, this is me and the statue of Australovenator out the front of the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum. You can see those sauropods, but everyone wants to go see Australovenator, the meat eater, the cool dinosaur, the fighting dinosaur. Again, this is a predator. This is something that is eating other animals. For what we find in Winton, doesn't seem like it's really good for taking on a massive sauropod where its juveniles are already the size of this animal. Possibly a scavenger, but we actually have pretty good evidence that it might be specialized in something else, maybe the ornithopods, particularly because we find a lot of Banjo's relatives down here in Victoria. A lot of megaraptorid fossils are found, actually, things like the Otway claw, which is almost a one-to-one for Australovenator's claw, just a little bit smaller. We don't have any sauropods down here. We have a lot of ornithopods, though, and this guy probably specialized in hunting ornithopods. This was the Winton Formation was kind of was a series of rivers, billabongs, swamps, and such in this basin that was left by the receding inland sea, the Eromanga. So this guy's just stalking around old river systems, old billabongs, and seems to be doing that in New South Wales. Its relatives like lightning claw, and down here in Victoria as well. It just likes to stalk waterways. Possibly an ambush predator, possibly a hunter. It's really hard to say. Likely an opportunistic scavenger. But like all fighting carnivorous dinosaurs, it was something that was striking fear into the hearts of everything in its ecosystem, sitting at the top of the food chain and just one of the ultimate predators of all time. Might be, these guys may actually have originated in Australia, and there's always sort of been a search and a debate for what dinosaur groups actually did originate here. There's been some back and forth with some groups, but these guys definitively seem, based on our fossil record, like they first propped up in Victoria, dispersed north into Queensland and New South Wales, and also went west towards South America. I'm probably going to find them in Antarctica at some stage. I wouldn't be surprised if they showed up in Africa either. I'll talk a little bit about Australovenator a bit later because I'll leave it there and let Dell talk about her choice, who, I got a feeling, I got a hunch.
I've picked my new boy, purely because this one has the bigger wingspan, and it also is known for more complete material. And I also get to show off this beautiful paleo art by Gabriel Uguedo. Shout out for that. You can even see like a little Kronosaurus popping out of the water there. So Haliskia is a pterosaur. Again, this is not a dinosaur, but it is a winged reptile. And Haliskia is only known from one specimen, the holotype, which was found a couple of years ago. But the rocks that it's from are 100 million years old. It's from a geologic formation known as the Tullabuck Formation. And I believe that's actually where Kunbarrasaurus is also from as well, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, it's a absolutely amazing fossil hotspot. If anyone is keen to try and find fossils there, go up to Richmond, go to the public fossicking area, and you never know. Just shift a whole bunch of dirt. You're bound to find something, but you might need some advice and guidance on what you're finding. But yes, pterosaurs have hollow bones. They likely ate fish and cephalopods, so things like squid and stuff like that. And it has these jaws of spike-shaped teeth. So, like dinosaurs as well, pterosaurs were constantly replacing their teeth and shedding them and growing new ones all the time, which is great because, again, we can find fossil evidence of an animal just based on a single tooth alone. One fossil can completely change our understanding of the fossil record and what is going on. And just to paint you a picture, again, I mentioned before that this animal was living around a massive inland sea. So it was probably hunting around there, but it would have needed to go to the coast and onto land to lay its eggs because pterosaurs and dinosaurs, they have what's called an amniotic egg. So as the egg is developing, it cannot go on water. If you try and put an egg in water as it's developing, it will drown because across that eggshell, you actually have oxygen being exchanged across that surface. So yeah, that's something to think about. About this time, 100 million years ago, we're heading towards something called the mid-Cretaceous thermal maximum. So we're seeing elevated surface temperatures of the ocean, elevated levels of carbon dioxide. This is starting to sound very familiar. But yeah, these animals were thriving. And again, with these massive 4.6-meter wingspans, this is bigger than any bird that's alive today. This is bigger than the albatross that are able to fly thousands of kilometers across the ocean. And it's honestly a little bit surprising, probably because of the fossil record and there not being like overlap between different ages. But it also wouldn't surprise me if we had, say, fossils of a pterosaur from one side of Gondwana, say like South America, and Australia as well. It just so happens that they're off by a few million years. But yeah, this is my boy, and this is who I'm going to be pitching to win this debate.
And just for context, if you didn't mention it, Adele actually got to write the paper and name this species as well. So she gets points for that.
Yeah. So when I say he's my boy, literally, this is my son.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing and bring up some of the questions that I want to ask you both about our various species. So, question number one, who has the best fossil record out of the three?
I have to go. I don't want to participate in this question.
I should have picked Diamantinosaurus. I regret all my life decisions.
This is a no-brainer. Kunbarrasaurus wins this fight every day of the week.
Yes,
you can't compete with that. That is a phenomenal specimen.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So if you didn't get sort of the full picture from the little mummy picture that we have, it's an almost complete skeleton. So it's got the skull, it's got most of the vertebra up to the middle tail. It's got the shoulder bones, it's got the arms, pelvis, both thigh bones, and a lot of those osteoderms or body armor as well.
I think it's technically the most complete dinosaur in all of Australia.
Yeah, so it's the most complete in all of Australia, Antarctica, Madagascar, and India. So all of those were parts of Gondwana. And it's also the most complete ankylosaur skeleton in all of the Gondwanan continents as well. So suck on
Yeah,
that.
that's a no-brainer question.
So what kind of percentage is yours in completion?
22% complete if I got the number of stomach ribs right and the number of tail vertebrae, which often don't preserve in different specimens. But I have the calculation somewhere in a very dodgy Word document from a couple of years back. But yeah, it's 22%.
And Jake, you've got arms, a leg, and
It's
a
around the
lower
same.
jaw.
Lower jaw, both lower jaws, both dentaries, a complete arm from bits of both sides, and then some extras and complete leg. I think Banjo's sitting around the 20 to 25% mark as well. It's hard to say because it's cut up into several different papers. The original says like 16%. There are more bits since then.
mm.
There's an Excel document that you can fill out, but I've also been told, like, ultimately, what does it matter? He's somewhere just over 20, but under 25% complete. And that's like an N of one. The next best complete theropod is 4 partial bones. So don't hold your breath at the moment.
Yes, so I think as well, Kunbarrasaurus has that amazing mummified specimen, and there's maybe a partial skull that was discovered in 2005, but we're not sure if it can be sort of determined to the species level. And I think same thing for yours, Dale. Yours is a single specimen from a single individual.
N equals 1. Yay! Paleontology.
Okay. I don't know how scoreable this question is, but it'll give people some more context for your animals. What sets your species apart from other similar ones overseas?
No.
You want to
Do you
go
want
or
to
you
go
want me to go?
first? No, I want you to go.
You want me to go? Right.
Yeah.
Megaraptors. These are very weird animals. For the longest time, we thought they were carnosaurs, the branch of theropods that gives you Allosaurus and the Carcharodontosaurs. We now think they're tyrannosaurs, and probably pretty close to that lineage, the Tyrannosaurids, the ones that give you the big tyrannosaurs like Tarbosaurus and T-Rex. And what are tyrannosaurs famous for? Big heads, tiny little arms. These guys have gone the exact opposite. Big arms, small head. Um, to the point where it seems like they're actually intentionally elongating their snout and making their teeth smaller because they don't need to hunt with their mouth. They are hunting with their hands. And we know that they've got these massive claws very early on. At 120 something million years ago, down here in Victoria, they've already got massive claws like this. Um, they've just taken the Tyrannosaur body plan and shot the other complete direction and gotten really successful in the southern hemisphere. I mean, Australovenator is one of the earliest ones known, sorry, the oldest ones in the world at 95 million years ago. But these animals, its relatives distribute into South America, and when the big Carcharodontosaurs bite the dust, they become some of the apex predators, particularly at the bottom, at the tip of South America. Might be that these guys are actually adapted for polar environments, things close to the poles where they become big and get successful. So it's a different type of tyrannosaur. It's just changed the game and just done something weird as Australia does with its natural history.
Yeah, what about you?
Okay. What sets this species apart from others overseas? Um, if you want to be a pterosaur weenie and expert in this, it's all about the teeth, the arrangement of the teeth and the jaws. What's the spacing and like what's the size of the tooth socket? So a bunch of different species are sort of named based on like subtle variations in the jaw. And the reason why we can't really use other parts of the skeleton is because they're flying through the skies. A wing bone, so if it's an upper arm bone, a humerus, that is a little bit more diagnostic, but it can only sort of get you as far as the family level. Whereas if you want to get, more specific, then the devil's in the detail and in the teeth.
I guess for Kunbarrasaurus, the main thing that people would probably think of is the lack of a tail club. There were other ankylosaurs around the world in places like Canada that also didn't have tail clubs, so it's not that unique. But also the quite weird thing is how small it is. Generally, those big ankylosaurs, not only did they get the armor and the weapons, they also got size, whereas Australia's little baby one, if it is going up against one of these other pterosaurs or dinosaurs, especially juveniles as well, it might be in trouble.
Um, you
Mhm.
said Kunbarrasaurus doesn't have its tail, yeah?
No, it doesn't. It has like half of it, but it doesn't have the very end. So we don't know if it was covered in big spikes. We don't think it's of the lineage that did have tail clubs.
Mhm.
So more likely it was either just stiffened and ended in a point like a lot of other dinosaurs, or maybe it had some fun spikes on it. But
I know that there's a theory that Kunbarrasaurus is related to like the Parankylosaurs. It's the group from Gondwana. And one of those is from, I want to say Chile, Stegurus, which has this, it has the tail and it's this whack Mayan club with these spikes and these fans coming out. I'd love to see if we ever found a Kunbarrasaurus with a tail, if it had something like that. That'd be awesome.
that would be amazing. That would be very cool. Okay. The next question is, who has the best story of discovery?
You want me to go first, Del, or you want to go?
Yeah, you go first,
Okay.
Jake.
Australovenator was found on farmland up in Winton. And like Dell said, most, if not everything in Winton is sauropod. And so there was a dig in the early 2000s to go collect some new sauropod. But in the pit with the sauropod was also some theropod. So these two animals have died together. And they are affectionately called Banjo Australovenator and Matilda Diamantinosaurus, named for Banjo Patterson's waltzing Matilda. They also sell some nice merchandise. I bought one for my wife. There's a card that says "Together Forever." They may have been prehistoric lovers. Who knows? Um, Probably an animal. Probably the sauropod died, and Australovenator went to scavenge it. I doubt it tried to hunt a massive sauropod, but it's a nice little surprise. Let's go find a giant sauropod and find the first and best complete theropod from Queensland and the best complete theropod from Australia.
I always loved that idea that it was hunting a live sauropod and then it was successful. It brought it down and then it got squished as the thing fell on it. That was always like, yes, that's definitely what happened.
They've
But
got
we're
the
not sure. We
video.
can't tell. But
They've got the video at Age of Dinosaurs too, if you do the tour, where the sauropod's stuck in like a billabong in a bog, and Australovenator goes to leap on it and gets whacked with the tail, dies next to it, and then the sauropod eventually just stays stuck in the mud. Throwbacks to what's that movie? Never-ending Story. My childhood trauma with that horse. Yeah, nice little surprise discovery story.
okay, Dale, what about yours?
In terms of the Haliskia discovery, yeah, like I remember opening Instagram one day and Kevin Peterson, the curator at Chronosaurus Corner, had messaged me, and there was like a complete lower jaw in the ground, and I was like, like this is amazing. And then they just kept on finding more and more bits. And it was actually found in an active quarry, so yeah, he did an amazing job like wrapping everything together. The plaster jackets were pretty hefty, um, like two good sized tables worth of fossil material. Yeah, 22%. I think off the top of my head, Frodraco was 10% complete and about 30 odd bones. So yeah, Haliskia is so many more. But yeah, it was just, yeah, it was so unexpected. Uh, quick tangent, I'm doing my PhD on pterosaurs because a farmer in outside of Winton made a discovery, and yeah, there was this specimen to work on. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, so many people want to name new species, and the fact that I got to do that as a PhD really blew my mind. It was a combination of luck and being in the right place at the right time. And then the fact that that happened again and I got tapped on the shoulder to work on it, was absolutely huge. Um, but yeah, it's probably like one of the best things that Kev's found, which is a pretty big call because he's found a bunch of amazing fossils up there in his time as curator.
I think we all owe a lot to Queensland farmers, honestly, as the people who find most of these fossils, including Kunbarrasaurus. This one has quite a fun story, I think, because it was originally found in 1989 on Marathon Station in the middle of Queensland, middle of nowhere, by a grazier who just happened to spot it. His name was Ian Evers. Evers?
Divers.
Ivers, thank you. Um, and oh, we've lost. No, he's still there. Okay. So this was pretty amazing because Ian had found just a few years before a big skeleton of a pterosaur, which was nicknamed Penny. And he had worked with the Queensland Museum to go and study it and for them to research it a little bit. And so when he came across this next fossil, he was like, yep, no worries. I'll call up the museum, do the same kind of thing. Um, and so he sent part of the fossil, he sent the ankle bone to the museum, and luckily it didn't get lost in the post. That would have been a travesty. And they were like, yep, we think it's an ankylosaur. They went out, they collected the rest of the amazing specimen, and they referred it to an already existing ankylosaur species known as minmi. And that was kind of it. They were like, it's not the holotype, which is the original kind of find that we use to describe a species. It's just another one that we've got. Yes, it's very cool. But it wasn't until about 25 years later that they CT scanned the specimen. Um, and they actually found enough distinguishing features that, like, oh, actually, this doesn't belong to this species. It's a whole new species. And so in 2015, they got to name it as Kunbarrasaurus Ivacy, which is after the person who found it, which I think is very cool as well. But yeah, I think it's a very cool story. Again, just showing off that we need farmers and we need these people to report their finds because we would have very little to talk about or work on without them. Okay, my next question for the two of you is who has the coolest name and what does that name mean? Del, I think you're probably
Me,
gonna win this one.
pick me. Haliskia, Peterson, I. Yeah, so Fur Draco means Iron Dragon. So I already used like one of the most common uh pterosaur name endings, Draco Dragon, and I was like, oh well, I don't know how I feel about having two dragons. Um, and I did what I normally do, which is I get very tired towards the end of writing a manuscript. I have an Excel spreadsheet of a bunch of words, and I at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, when my brain is just hot potato, like hot mashed potato in my head, I'll just begin fiddling around with it. And I came up with um, Haliskia, which is sea phantom. So halite, that's salt. And then Skya is like a phantom or an apparition. Um, so yeah, I just thought like sea phantom, like haunting this long lost ocean that's no longer there, um, was yeah, a nice little thing to whip together. And then I also named it Peterson I after Kevin Peterson because I wouldn't have had the specimen without him. Not only did he find it, he also prepared it as the curator at the museum, and he probably put in as many hours as I did, if not more, working on that specimen. So I asked him if he wanted to be a co-author on the paper, and he was like, "No, not really my thing." And I was like, "All right, I got you. Like, I know how to really like pay homage and like respect you for like all the work that you've done." So yeah. All right, Jake, what do you got?
I'm gonna fight for the name, but you can't compete with someone naming their own animal. Like that's the dream. I didn't name Australovenator. I do get to work on it. But Australovenator means the southern hunter. Austral, south, and Venator, hunter. It is Winton's southern hunter with the species name Winensis. I mean, Australia's hunter pretty much. Like it is the epitome of a predatory animal from down under. It's a damn cool name. I like when I
When
sit
it's pronounced correctly.
there. I've had Americans come like, oh, the Australovenator. And when
The Lovenator.
if you ever played Lovenator, if you ever played Jurassic World Evolution, they call it, what do they say? Australovenator. Oh, God, stop butcher. Just let an Aussie say it once, and you'll be okay. Um, yeah, no. When I sit there in my extra hours and try to put together dinosaur names for the inevitable theropod that I find and name, with all the amazing record we have, Venator is often a suffix I employ quite a bit. It's a damn cool name.
I think as well, it's good to note for people that when you are the scientist who is writing the paper and describing a new species, you're the one who gets to name it. It's not often the discoverer who gets to name it. Sometimes they can have input. But yeah, there's kind of this list of guidelines of how to name a species. And one of those guidelines also kind of says that it's bad manners to name a new species after yourself. So if you are thinking of going into paleontology and have these grand ideas of finding a new dinosaur and naming it after yourself, it's a bit frowned upon. But you can name it after someone else. So if you happen to share a last name with a sibling or something, I don't know, I'm sure you can be creative in that way. For Kunbarrasaurus, this is quite a cool name. Saurus is classic, it means lizard, as with all other dinosaurs. But Kunbarra is the word for shield in the local Aboriginal Mayi Wunamara language. So they authors, I think, consulted with the local community and said, "We've got this new dinosaur. Do you have a word or a name that you would like to propose?" And so that got in. And then the species name, Ivacy, also acknowledges the person who found it. So I think that's quite a cool one. But I don't think we're going to win here, Jake, when
We didn't
Adele
name them.
has named not one, but two of her own
Two of
terrifying
the five
species.
Australian pterosaurs.
Yeah, I know.
That's
It's
40%.
yeah,
That's more than the percentage of pterosaur there is.
yeah. Okay, we're going to get into a few hypotheticals now. So, if there was a food shortage in the Cretaceous where our animals lived, who would survive for the longest? Or just tell me, how do you think your animal would do in that circumstance?
Bad. Predators, predators, predators tend to suffer in food. I mean, it depends. Like, is the shortage of prey species, or is it like a bottom up? Is it like bottom of the food chain? So is the plant life the shortage?
Well, we're in Australia, so let's say it was something like a drought.
Okay, well, I mean, there's probably ample scavenging, but it depends how long this drought's been going on for and how many other predators you got to compete with. Again, we don't have evidence of a big theropod. There might be something that's muscling its way and beating these. But if we're talking about a drought in the kind of early to mid stages, probably okay for the time being, but long term probably wouldn't do great. These aren't big, bulky animals. They probably don't want to put on too much weight because then you lose your predatory advantage. Probably not the best.
Okay. Del, what about you?
Ooh, food shortage. If it's a drought and my animal mainly eats fish and squid, might not be too heavily impacted, although I will note the productivity on land and like runoff. It does affect the oceans. Like it is all one connected system. It's not like there's a barrier between like land and ocean, which is also why we need to be really like mindful stewards and stop our rubbish from getting into the ocean and all that good stuff. But yeah, in terms of like a food shortage, I mean, if it got really bad, this animal would probably just fly somewhere else where there was plenty more food. So
Yeah, I think
again, flight is a superpower.
yeah, I think you've kind of got us there because I think Kunbarrasaurus is probably okay for a little while. It's quite small, so it probably doesn't need that much food. It liked its ferns, and it could had these quite effective teeth for snipping quite hard vegetation, so it could potentially adapt its diet a little bit. But at the same time, stomach contents from other ankylosaurs overseas show that it's actually quite a picky eater. So in Canada, there's this incredible specimen called Boreapelta, something like that. Um, and it's also a gorgeous mummified specimen with stomach contents. And it found that it only ate this one kind of fern. They have all these amazing leaf fossils from the exact same timeline, exact same formation. So there was heaps of stuff around, but this animal just liked this one thing. So if Kunbarrasaurus is also a picky little eater, then it's doomed. So remains to be
That's
seen.
koala energy right there.
Yeah. Okay. The next one, oh, I'm gonna switch it around a bit. Okay. Which species would have been the smartest? And is there a way we can even tell?
I think the only one we're going to really know with here is Kunbarrasaurus, because if you can get an internal scan of the brain case, you can kind of estimate the size of the brain, and then there's the whole argument brain size and smarts go together. But Australovenator is the lineage of birds, and birds are pretty damn smart. I would throw in a towel that Banjo's probably got a bit going on up here. Probably doing some Jurassic paleontology back then, digging with those claws. That's what the claws are for. You're digging up the Jurassic rocks that are preserved in what becomes outback Queensland.
Ooh. I will piggyback and steal Jake's answer a little bit and just say birds are smart and they have a lot going on because they have to deal with flight, which is very complex. There's a lot of processing. You have to be quick, you have to be on your feet. There's a lot of things happening. And then yeah, I think I've heard before that bird brains are particularly efficient because they have like more neurons that like attach compared to like our brains. They're more efficient. And it's not all about size. The brain endocast, so like the space inside the skull where the brain sits in a koala, which I just mentioned before, it that the brain doesn't even occupy all of that space. So yes, it's a good proxy, and you can do some really cool stuff. Like you can see like what parts of the brain are enlarged, like you can get a rough sense of like the sense of smell, like how important different senses are, all of that stuff. But again, we don't have fossil brains most of the time in the fossil record. Um, so it's our best guess. And yeah, I'm gonna just kind of say, anything that flies is normally pretty smart. Chickens aren't a great example, thinking out loud, but we have also domesticated them. And, domestic animals, they generally don't run away. They're normally not, they're not plotting any like heists, you know?
I would
So
say
yeah, I might just leave it there.
I
Sorry,
would
Jake?
say I would say seagulls aren't smart. And I mean, you're pretty much talking about glorified seagulls. So.
Oh, that's
I,
a fighting
I
word.
I beg to differ. Like when they see that fish and chip packet open, all systems are go. They are all over you. They know what it's about.
They're wily. Yes, but I think we can safely say it's not going to be Kunbarrasaurus. I think often with herbivores, they have some smarts about them, but if fern don't move, why need hunt? So it's ferns don't move very quickly. There doesn't have to be a lot of strategy to eat them. And so again, small size, we're probably not that big a brain. Um, and I would say as well, having that armor and n no weapons that we know of might not mean that a lot of its energy is going towards the development of a big, strong brain, but rather big, strong muscles. So I don't think I'm going to win for that particular fight. Okay. Next question. If your species was brought back to life right now, would it adapt well to our modern ecosystems? Would it survive?
This is a hard one. I mean, outback Queensland is probably the same as it was 95 million years ago. Maybe probably a lot less water. Yeah.
No forests, no inland
No
sea.
forest, no. It's, I mean, if you found a consistent environment with what it was surviving in, probably, but then it's a lot colder than it was in the Cretaceous. It's probably not going to enjoy the climatic change. If we ignored all those ever important things and the fact that the world is actually getting hotter, you stick it into any ecosystem and it's going to be the top predator like that. It's going to outcompete everything bar humans that are, Humans probably wouldn't do great one-on-one, but if you congregate and if you have your weapons, you'll be okay. But it's going to decimate ecosystems, particularly if there's a group of them and you allow them to breed and spread out and take over. This would be quickly become a pest and apex predator. Um, I just don't think it would fit. I don't think we've got the right environments. I don't think we have the right. I don't think there's enough to sustain it, particularly in Australia. Like maybe to go after roos, but ultimately, it's an animal out of time. I think it would do as poorly now as I would 95 million years ago.
Okay, Del, what about you?
Oh, I was thinking before, like the idea of a pterosaur out in outback Queensland when it's lamb season and you've got all these cute little lambs toddling about and they can't keep up with the mob, they would be easy pickings. But again, this is a pterosaur that's adapted to hunt around a big inland ocean. We don't have that in Australia today. There are very few inland oceans, quite famously. And we're also seeing, species like albatross not doing too crash hot either. Um, so even though, yeah, it wasn't as hot as it was like back then. Yeah, I think there's just too many factors going against these pterosaurs. And then it might also be a case of, well, if you bring, only a few back, they might have been really social animals. And, depending on whether one pterosaur was looking after the young while the other one went to go hunt, maybe like what penguins do, all of those factors, you could see a population decline and crash or a genetic bottleneck effect, which is things we see with conservation today. So yeah, those things into consideration. They're probably not going to take off. I wouldn't be too worried about a mad scientist with a time machine bringing pterosaurs back and them swarming all over you. It's not impossible, but I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay, this is my time to shine because mine would definitely win this argument. I think the issue with bringing back species like predators that eat meat, like both of yours, like direwolves that we've heard about in the news, which they didn't actually bring back from extinction, let me be clear, is that we haven't solved any of our conservation issues with current predatory species. Look at how Australia treats dingoes and crocodiles, or how, in North America they treat wolves. They are a threat to livestock, and so they get shot and killed. Relocation doesn't work that well a lot of the time. And we haven't solved this for species that we are currently living with and have lived with for a long, long time. So if you bring back any of your two carnivores, they're gonna eat livestock. They're gonna eat your little lambs, and farmers are gonna get angry and shoot them. Even though it's a very cool dinosaur or archosaur. However, if you have cute little tank boy Kunbarrasaurus, he's gorgeous. He's pretty small. He's smaller than a cow, so he probably eats less or a comparable amount. Um, Australia's pretty used to dangerous animals, so I reckon this guy could hold his own against a human. So hopefully that would keep people wary and cautious enough around him that he could like live peacefully. But also that we would love him. He's basically a glorified echidna. So yes, absolutely. I think we should bring them back. We have ferns and the little fibrous plants that they liked to eat on still today. So I think get a whole herd of them, put them everywhere, and everyone would enjoy it very much, especially me. So stuff you guys, I win. Okay, this is going to be one of our last questions. Oh, I don't think I'm winning this one. Who would win in a fight between our three species?
Go on, Jake.
Banjo doesn't go for Kunbarrasaurus. I don't think anything's messing with that. I think Kunbarrasaurus digs into the ground and sits there and says, come.
Glorified echidna. Yep.
What about Echidna? I don't think they don't fight. Nothing fights Kunbarrasaurus. He's just chilling. Now, if we talk theropod versus pterosaur, it depends. Is this like a Pokemon situation? Is there fighting versus flying? Is there Steal
Ooh.
first on, I don't know. I don't know what we're going for here. It,
I mean, we both have hollow bones,
we both have
so
hollow.
that's one thing.
It depends. It depends if,
How hollow are
I
your
feel
bones
like,
again?
hey,
How hollow are those bones again? What's
very,
the thickness of the like wall of the bone?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but not that
Is
thick.
it more than 1 millimeter?
It's more than 1 millimeter.
Well, there's your
Oh,
answer.
then. Oh, then. I feel like Pharaoh Draco and Haliskia kind of harry a bit and swoop in, and Banjo just
Mm,
in one whack and you're done.
yeah, yeah. I feel like you just need to get one hit and it would be a KO, be a knockout.
Yeah.
Or like there would be an injury, or yeah, if you tear that like membrane of skin that makes up the wing, yeah, like if you injure it bad enough, like
One
it's
and
not
done.
getting out of there.
Yeah.
We don't find pterosaurs that have paleopathologies, that have these healed injuries because they're not, able to cope
Yeah.
with it. They're not living in social groups the way ornithopods might have and looking after one another. It kills them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know what? Here's a hot take too. You know what? I reckon the Megaraptor claws are for getting under the hard bit of the Ankylosaur, pulling it over and getting to the guts. I reckon this yeah. This
Yeah,
is
that
nothing
underside's
going
got no scales,
That's
or
the
well,
nothing
thing.
no
going
I
on there.
osteoderms.
I said this in one of the other talks that when we were all down on that dig with Zev, and he was like, yeah, ankylosaurs are just like pineapples. Like once you get through their, spiky exterior, it's all juice inside. So yes, I think I would be good up until a point, and hopefully I would be small and lumpy enough that you guys just wouldn't bother and you just go and find something easier. But as for spikiness and sharp teeth, Kunbarrasaurus ain't it. So
I think Australovenator goes for ornithopods, maybe pterosaurs if he's feeling greedy. Goes for Kunbarrasaurus when he's getting a bit desperate. Probably could take it on, depends. If you've got like a weathered veteran Kunbarrasaurus that knows what it's doing, you probably don't want to touch that, and it's probably going to end poorly.
yeah. But he's also quite small, like compared to Australovenator as well. Like
Yeah.
even strength wise in those arms and claws, I think you would probably fare better.
Yep.
Okay, last question to end out the evening. Out of all of the Australian dinosaurs, including your favorites, what species would you actually choose to bring back to life?
There's one answer to this question. We all agree on this question. It's one of the sauropods. What, like, I don't understand those things. Like, they're big here and they get so big. Things like Paralititan and Argentinosaurus, they get massive. How does something like that move? How does
Yeah.
something like that exist? How do you keep yourself upright? How do you keep your head upright and carry around all that weight and eat enough? Like a sauropod is the one answer when it comes to, I'd argue that anything, not just dinosaurs or archosaurs, anything extinct,
Mm,
the answer is always sauropod.
yeah. Like seeing dinosaurs of Patagonia at Queensland Museum and like truly comprehending like, wow, like the femur, the upper thigh bone is bigger than I am. And I am an average sized human adult. Like it's absolutely crazy. And yeah, it would just be absolutely awe-inspiring to be around an animal that massive, and just like, does the ground shake like when they walk, and yeah, just what does it look like and all of that stuff. As much as I want to see like my study species because it would help me finish off this bloody PhD and it would be very handy. No, if a nice man with a white fan comes up and he has like all this weird lab gear and he's like, which dinosaur are you picking? Everyone, if you only learn one thing from today's session, you answer sauropod and preferably an Australian one.
Agreed. Well, thank you both very much. I think we're honestly pretty close in who won what. I think the ticks that I have that of who definitively won things, Adele, you are one ahead of the both of us. Still not a dinosaur, so hedge your bets, people. But
Adele
intriguing
wins
to
because
ask
she named
for.
it. Adele wins because she named it. We need to come back in 10 years when you and I have both named an Archosaur cell
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
reattempt this.
We can do that, absolutely. Okay, thank you everyone so much for joining us again. This was the last of the three of us that you will hear together, but we will no doubt be creating more events for you in the future because we just like talking to each other and arguing about which dinosaur or archosaur is best. However, if you didn't quite get your fix from tonight's and the last two talks, I will be hosting two more. One is on the opalized dinosaurs of Lightning Ridge, which is happening next week. This is our last online event. And then, if you are in Sydney, you are welcome to come to the Macquarie University History Museum, where I'll be chatting with bioarchaeologist Ronica Power about all things archaeology and paleontology as well. Let me see. And if you do want to follow us and all of the adventures we will be going on in our various paleontology journeys, please go and follow us on Instagram. You can also hear from Adele and both of us as guests on the Pals in Paleo podcast. And if you do ever happen to find a dinosaur or a fossil, first, please let us know. And you can jump onto the Founder Fossil website to figure out some guidelines and who you can contact. But you can also just shoot us a message on Instagram. We'd love to find out what your next dinosaur find is. But that is all from us. So again, thank you so much for coming and watching, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. Thanks so much.